Good morning. My name's Robert. I'm the general manager of the group, and for the sake of efficiency, I don't want to tell you much more that Miguel hasn't already told us. He's presented a executive summary and offered a clear vision of the project segment approach. I'm very immersed in renewables, in 360-degree projects. And what's the differential element? And what are we in B2B projects in 360? Well, basically this conception, this approach, this 360-degree approach has been explained perfectly by Miquel. I think that in the last Capital Markets Day, I tried to define Dominion using 6 words. Technological background, because technology, digitization has always been present. It's always been our upstream knowledge, our way of doing things. These 2 terms, industrial vocation, you know that our world is the industrial world. It's a long-term vision. It's all about understanding all the production processes. And then we also refer to financial mentality. In other words, understanding the financial process, the financial solution that is required in each project for each client. And to those 6 words, we can add this concept of sustainable approach. So in 8 words, that is what Dominion is. That technological background from which our efficiency flows, that financial mentality, that industrial vocation, and that sustainable approach. As Miquel said, sustainability is the surname of efficiency. There's nothing sustainable in the long term that cannot be efficient, and that is how within this holistic global knowledge we're able to actually provide value to our clients and our partners. Therefore, the differential factor, it's not a miracle recipe, it's our know-how. It's about having a full understanding of the value chain. And that is the key. And when we refer to the value chain, we refer to design, development, financing, construction, startup. And here, when we talk about Dominion and simplifying and conceptualizing, the following comes to mind. It's not what we do, it's how we do it, the know-how. And we have to consider how we're developing a series of 360-degree projects that will give rise to infrastructures, industrial infrastructures, social impact infrastructures, or energy transition infrastructures, but under the common denominator of intangible knowledge, where what's important is the intangible. The important thing is the knowledge of the process. What's important is knowing how to develop the process well. A good design, it's really being successful in financing, it's understanding the client's needs and understanding all the links in the value chain, because at the end of the day, the construction, the moment of the tangible material execution is a bit of a commodity. Miquel said before that this is about 12,500 people. What's key is upstream. It's that top 100 in Dominion. And that's the way we do things. It's savoir-faire. It's the key and the focus that we have to embed in our strategic approach for 360-degree projects. And what does all of this entail for the future? Well, it clearly aligns our interests with those of the client. In other words, it's very important to be eligible to be partners. We have to speak the same language as our client. We have to understand their needs. We'll later see this in the part on renewables. So what do we talk about in our concept of renewables? Our projects refer to return, because we know at the end of the chain there is a IPP partner, a potential IPP client that we would like to complement, with whom we want to accompany, and we want to speak the same language as them. Evidently, this captures or absorbs the entire value margin of the chain. 360 degrees has a lot to do with the 2 Ds of Dominion, the Ds for diversification and financial discipline. Insofar as we control, and as Miquel said before, if we have knowledge of our value chain, let's say a 40-point value chain, and we focus exclusively on construction, then we're missing all of that. We're not creating entry barriers or nodes for any competitor we may have. It's fundamental. It's important to have knowledge and an understanding of this production process. And with these approaches, what we aim to achieve is to be in this ecosystem in the long term, either because it will derive in a minority participation in investments in infrastructures that we're making. We want to be in the long-term ecosystem because it will be a source of future opportunity. And as I was saying before, at the end of the day, 99% of our projects result in a physical structure, in a photovoltaic park, in the delivery of a building, or its conversion into a hospital. We're talking about infrastructures, and these 3 types of infrastructures emanate or stem from those 3 important transitions Miquel referred to, which we're currently experiencing. industrial transition, digital social transition, and energy transition. And I believe that these are, let's say, the tailwinds or the favorable inertia that is going to provide us with the necessary impetus and fuel to transform this segment into a quasi-recurring one or recurrent one. I'd now like to touch upon some more financial aspects and Dominion's concept of always trying to find a financial solution. Obviously, we're involved in relevant projects such as in Angola, projects of relevant hospitals with 15-year replacement of medical equipment. We have a relevant portfolio in terms of the entire photovoltaic segment. So we have to find solutions. So within the scope of this 360 approach and the need to find a solution, taking into account that we have to provide solutions that guarantee payment, that protect us, that protect the margins in the value chain. And following on from Michael's comments earlier, I'd like to present the different financial solutions that we've identified, ranging from projects in more emerging or so-called hippie countries, where we operate more regularly with export credit agencies, ECAs, fundamentally Swedish, Danish and English ECAs. So with the buyer's credit, we're able to a certain extent provide a turnkey to our client. And this is wonderful. And to a certain extent, this allows us to operate in a very comfortable and safe way. And we've done this in the past, albeit to a less relevant degree, as a consequence of some of our projects, largely in the fields of health, hospitals and others. We had to seek financial solutions based on a special purpose vehicle approach. And perhaps it was less visible because upon entry, we initially had a minority participation. And the civil constructor would have had 80% or 90% participation. It wasn't our intention in any way to be a subcontractor. Our intention was always to get promotion to the first division. And we wanted to understand exactly what the end client or customer wanted and what the builder wanted, and that's why we protected our position with a position on the board and with a minority stake. And clearly from the first phase of the IPO, we always said that we would not invest in equity beyond 50% of the expected contribution margin. That's the financial discipline I was referring to, and that's the approach we were providing to all of the projects that are basically respond to this transition, digital social transition, as I said before, made explicit in essential basic infrastructure such as hospitals, etc. And now let's move on to minority participation in renewables, because perhaps this is what has aroused most interest. Since year-end, it's probably something we've talked about more. We've talked a lot more about renewables, and I'd like to focus on this a little more. So we asked ourselves, how could we approach the renewables segment? Well, applying the Dominion philosophy, maximizing value and liquidity. We would analyze this trinomial of profitability, risk and liquidity. We are facing a situation in which we've clearly seen that a transition was just around the corner, an important major energy transition in the world of renewables, something we identified since the company was floated on the stock market, something we wanted to address from the industrial arm, but as Michael said, we began to rotate assets and we observed that we had to find a complete financial solution, a financial solution that would provide us with visibility and certain volume. It wasn't a question of doing 100 megawatts and rotating them. It was a question of extracting value from all of that. So our strategy here is clearly not to be an IPP. We have not been born to be an IPP. We cannot compete. And I believe that IPPs are very hackneyed in the market, and our differentiation has to be different to this. What we're looking for is industrial positioning. We want to act as facilitators and be eligible for clients who are IPPs. We are seeking associations or alliances with really relevant partners, as we did in Central America and the Caribbean with CMI, where we know that we're going to share this infrastructure on a minority basis, as a minority stakeholder. We know that this long-term situation and maintaining those participations at a given moment will give us the opportunity to undertake refinancing, yield compression, as you know, carry out corporate operations. In the final case, as Michael said, this, to a certain extent, is a natural outlet for our renewable strategy. But in turn, this will be a bit like that piggy bank. It will be a financial investment with a reasonable two-digit IRR, which is obviously not the RONA of 60 to 20%, but which can be rotated or allows to seek opportunities to generate cash or to transform it into cash, liquidity. So in the case of fixed assets, you won't see this in treasury, but this will really be financial investments which will end up generating a return. We're talking about IRRs, double-digit equity yields, and this return will somehow be converted into capital and cash throughout the life of the plan, or depending on what need or what strategy we have in the different geographies. Therefore, that's the key. We should see ourselves as facilitators. We should see ourselves as, just as we provide a service to our clients, here we would choose ourselves to look for suitable partners and IPPs. And we believe that we should position ourselves in this way so that we can be the differential parts and allow the IPPs to perfectly see us as the right travel partner on this journey. I'd like to go into detail about the three types of infrastructures. Basically, everyone in industry is familiar with these. We may be talking about storage solutions, about moving, let's say, cooling tower infrastructures. But what's important is the design, the knowledge, the underlying technology, what is invisible, what's under the iceberg. So you'll see here that normally our clients are large contractors, large private clients. And it's not business as usual here. The solution is the typical project whereby you will collect by milestones, etc., by progress, and we would assess the credit quality of our clients. We determine if we feel comfortable and operate as partners. Growth drivers in this journey or in this process. Well, as you can see here, we're present in virtually all continents. Perhaps it's the most diversified activity from the US, from all of Europe, Southeast Asia, Australia, India, etc. But everything is underpinned by the axis of sustainability. As Mikel pointed out, all these relocation events, everything that involves demolition or dismantling, all that technology that we have, these storage needs, all of these will be the drivers that will naturally feed the portfolio and the new projects that we will have in the part of industrial infrastructures in the strategic plan. The part of social impact infrastructures, which is largely the part which relates to large public clients, perhaps the Ministry of Energy or the Ministry of Health in the given geography. The clients of the countries, and here we're referring to multilateral financing structures with, let's say, quote-unquote dry guarantees. There's very stringent requirements, and we know that all of this funding that's released is because, to a certain extent, we're eligible, we're selected for our knowledge and our ability to transfer prestige, knowledge, sustainability, relating to everything in these, let's say, flagship projects that are so important for the country in question and which give us that added notoriety. The growth drivers, well, here we're talking about Angola. I'm referring to essential key infrastructures in emerging countries, high voltage lines, residential electrification. For example, we have also practically approved 1 billion euros with different Nordic ECAs and Danish ECAs in order to undertake these projects. This is not in the backlog, but the financial capacity is there and we have the support, the backing. And in Chile and certain other Central American countries, such as Nicaragua, but as I said, especially in Chile, will be supported by the entire concession plan. We believe that we are positioning ourselves as the global partner in everything relating to medical equipment, hospital knowledge, integration, data correlation. In other words, we believe that we are the perfect partner for all of those projects where civil constructors have been awarded in Chile. I'd like to move on to energy transition and infrastructures. I can present what we have so far. We've provided some information about megawatts in construction. As you know, our desire is to look for partners with a closed solution with a powerful group such as CMI, very knowledgeable in the area and knowledgeable of the Latin American Caribbean area. We're looking for a partnership for the entire European part, which we would like to be at least 60% to contribute to the part of our projects. The characteristics of these projects basically consist of photovoltaic projects with a high level of commodities and a low level of risks. What's important is knowledge, development, and adequate design of all of those projects. That's what we'll look for. Concept will not be to be an IPP. We may have an asset in which we may have a majority participation, but that will be in the fewer cases. Throughout the plan, we aim to share this with a partner. In other cases, we'll continue as with a minority participation. But we'll be looking for a commitment to our long-term vision with partners that we find along the way. And the aim is to translate this commitment into having a shared management, or basically a minority participation in those projects. But as I said, this has to be seen as a financial asset that is yielding an IRR that's adequate, and at a given moment throughout the plan, as Mikel said, well, we can occasionally generate liquidity as a result of, let's say, recapitalization or refinancing of our portfolio, or accompaniment with partners, etc. We aim to achieve a balance in our projects, and one thing that we have observed is that our projects will largely be in hard currency, so everything we're doing in LATAM is in US dollars, and everything European is European. Furthermore, everything we're doing in LATAM right now, I would say 100% are PPAs with the government. The only thing we have is a wind project, and since it's in Mexican pesos, we're valuing this, and we're determining how we can, let's say, bring this through within the scope of this plan. There's not much more for me to say about growth drivers. The whole part of renewables is a train that's traveling at full speed. The truth is that the sector faces a wonderful future. There's a lot of oxygen left and a lot of fuel for the coming years, but we have to choose the right wagon on which to travel, and we believe that it's important to choose the right strategy. We want to avoid denaturalizing Dominion and ensure that we give our company a purpose and strategy. And here's just some more information for you, information about the megawatts part. Blended level, although we currently have 271 photovoltaic megawatts under construction that have to be completed this year. In the Dominican Republic, there are 44 megawatts in Spain, basically a project in Zamora called the Valdecaretas project. You'll have all the information about this. And Mikel said something very important earlier. The consequence of all of this is that we will have a segment of information of these so-called minority financial interests in these assets. Why are we going to separate it? And although it's true, and we said this before, we're not going to consolidate either sales or EBITDA, it's relevant in terms of our balance sheet. It's important that you see that we have part of the company which is cash positive, and that is part of the company that will have debt which is 100% attached to this financial investment. And although the debt will, let's say, have a bearing interest rate, of course, with these financial assets, we'll have to measure these in terms of cash flow so you can see the degree of equity consumption of these assets, how they're financed, and also how they're reflected in the balance sheets. And I'd like to conclude with one slide. Mikel mentioned this before. Our obsession is recurrence, this notion of sustainability and simplification. And little by little, this segment is becoming quite recurrent with a high level of visibility. And we wanted to present this slide, this figure. You can see that it's highly diversified according to these three types of infrastructures, three types of transitions, geographies. It's basically for you to have an idea of the portfolio. Last year, in terms of B2B projects, we generated 350 million euros. Mikel referred to a growth of 5%. For the plan, we would have to make about 1.6 billion euros. Where do we have those funds? Well, we have 600 million in portfolio. And we have to be very specific when we refer to this pipeline. It's not a random pipeline. There are names and surnames that can be attached to these projects. We have 450 million euros for the period of opportunities, and we expect that many will crystallize. In other words, 30% for execution in the plan. We would have that. It's true that in the field of renewables, our visibility is very high, but as I said before, in the part of essential infrastructures and hospitals, within those 1.6 billion, there's a large proportion covered by financing. And when you have a financial solution, you feel more comfortable. So that's the reason why we wanted to label this or define this as a, let's say, quasi-recurrent segment. Visibility is very high and the focus is very clear. And in an attempt to be efficient and to complement Miguel's part, I'll leave it there and hand over to Germán.